Hi everyone, hope all of you are doing super well, and in this video I wanted to share with all of you another topic, which is measuring solution performance. So we would have come up with a lot of solutions, but then how do you measure the performance? How is it working? How is it performing? How is it even satisfying our business goals and objectives? So in order to validate all this, you need to measure these performance measures. This information again is taken from the BABOK guide, and without any delay, let's get into it. So, why would we even want to measure this performance in the first place? So, the data that we're going to use, and based on what data we collect, we want to evaluate the effectiveness of the solution in relation to the value it brings. Okay, so we would have built a solution with a value in mind, with the value that it's supposed to deliver. So how do we know if that solution has delivered that value or not? It's only when you start collecting and measuring this performance is when you are able to say that yes, a particular solution has delivered a value which is according to what the business anticipated. Okay, so the business analysts need to work with the stakeholders to determine the right measures that need to be collected. So you just can't go ahead and collect any performance measure. You need to collect the right performance measures that would be able to contribute and validate if that solution has provided the right value that was anticipated by the business. So the performance may be assessed through key performance indicators, and I think you would have heard of KPIs some point of time. If not, I'll be taking a video maybe sometime later on what KPIs are and what are the misconceptions teams have, when they collect APIs. So you need to make sure that these KPIs are collected and they are aligned in a way that, as I said, with the enterprise measures, the goals, the objectives, not only of the enterprise but even of your project. Okay, so that's about why we should be measuring these key performance indicators. The next one is what you need to keep in mind when you are going to measure, okay, or when you are going to collect these measurements. Okay, so one thing you need to keep in mind, the very first one, is the business objective. So what is the business objective? The business objective is the measurable results that the enterprise wants to achieve. We all know about it. And the second one is the implemented solution. So how do we know if a solution has met with a value or not? We need to have some solution in order to compare and validate. So that's why you need the implemented solution. So this implemented solution, it could be a component of a solution that exists in any form. It could be a component, or it can be the entire solution on its whole. And this solution can be in any form. It could be either like an operating solution. It could be like a prototype. It could be like a pilot or a beta version, whatever is the existing solution. And if you want to validate if it's going to satisfy the value, you take that up as the implemented solution. So there are several steps that you need to follow in order to start collecting these performance measures. So the very first one is you want to define the solution performance measures. Once you have defined those measures, now you need to treat these performance measures as any other requirement. So what do we do when we define requirements? We, of course, we validate them, right? So the same thing we need to do even with these performance measures. We need to validate them with the right stakeholders. And last is you need to start collecting. Okay, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind before you start collecting these performance measures. And let's see each step in detail. So the very first step is to define the solution performance measures. Okay, so first one is, the very first thing you want to do is you want to check if there is already any existing measures. Okay, and even though if there are any measures, you want to check whether they still stand valid for that particular solution and for that particular business goal. So you want to check if they are accurate enough. Okay, or if you want to tweak that solution performance measure. If at all you don't have any of these performance measures, then what you want to do is you want to elicit these performance measures with the right stakeholders. Now, these stakeholders could be anyone who is well concerned with the solution as well as the value it's providing to the business. So they could be the sponsors, they could be the high level business owners, it could be your stakeholders. Whoever are the decision owners and holders, they should be the ones you collaborate with in order to identify these performance measures, because they would be the right people who can tell you what exactly they are expecting to measure. Okay. And some of the common sources where you'll be able to look up to in order to take these performance measures, in order to define and identify these performance measures, as I said, it could be your business goal, the business objectives, different third party vendors, regulations. So for example, let's say your business goal is to increase the customer adoption rate. So at that time, if that's going to be a objective, an intermediate objective, then you should be tracking how much of customers are getting onboarded into your solution, how many purchases are happening, things like that. So you get a direction in what type of measures you want to actually define and collect. When it comes to third party vendor regulations, let's say they are charging you for a certain set of licenses. So at that time, you would want to track the licenses of a particular software or a particular hardware in order to keep track of what would be the costs that it would incur for the business. So these are some of the areas in which you can actually look out for these solution measures, performance measures. And when you're defining these measures, you need to even think about two types of measures. You need to think about, maybe you should be collecting qualitative and also you should be collecting quantitative if necessary. Okay. So as we all know, qualitative tells us how people are feeling, how customers are feeling about a solution, about a process, or about something. What are they thinking, feeling, things like that. When it comes to quantitative measures, it's more about amounts, something you can measure, something that's finite, countable, things like that you should be thinking about when you want to pick up and define these solution performance measures. So now, since we have, after let's say you have connected with your stakeholders, collaborated with them, and defined these, solution performance measures, or you would have even looked up at what are the existing solution performance measures. The second one, as I said, is you need to start validating them. So now when you want to validate these performance measures, so you need to validate these performance measures and any other influencing criteria that would influence these measures as well. So once you put everything down, as I said, you need to connect with the stakeholders and all decision owners in order to validate and see if this is what we are supposed to be collecting or not. And then you can tweak it a bit. So now once you have all the validated performance measures, the next step is you want to plan how you're going to start collecting these performance measures. That leads us to the third step. So in the third step, which is collecting of performance measures, we need to keep in mind certain things. And what are these things? The very first one is volume and the sample size. So let's say you're having a solution that is supposed to solve the problems of multiple departments. So when you're collecting these measures and you want to understand how many departments are getting onboarded and what's the adoption rate, it doesn't mean that you should be only focusing on one department. In that way, if a particular department has got onboarded, or if it's vice versa, it's going to misinterpret actually the situation and the information. It's going to create a bias as well. So in that way, in order to avoid these biases and skewed data, you need to identify what exactly is the volume of data that I should be collecting, what is the sample size, and what are the samples that I should be collecting. So that's the very first one you should keep in mind and identify that you have the right volume and the right sample. So usually if you have a large volume of data, that's super helpful, but sometimes it's really not feasible to collect that amount of data. So when you have limited amount of data that you would be collecting, you need to make sure that the sample size as well as the sample that you're collecting is unbiased. The next one you need to keep in mind is the frequency and timing. So sometimes you don't need to track certain metrics in a real-time basis. Sometimes it's on-demand metrics, or sometimes it's a monthly or at particular intervals. So you even need to keep in mind at what frequency and timing you want these metrics is. Because make sure, like, or keep in mind, like, collecting these matrices and metrics and then storing them, of course it incurs cost, because you're storing them, you're logging them up, it's going to take some amount of storage. So you don't want to, collect unnecessary data when it's really not required. So even consider at that time the frequency as well as the timing when you want to collect it. So let's say you want to analyze some trend. At that time you need a particular series of a particular time period of data. So if in that case you would know that data is supposed to be collected from this time frame to that particular end time frame. But if you want, as I said, ad hoc or on a particular time period, then you should also be defining that. And the last one is freshness of the data. So you always would want, depending on your use case, you would everyone would prefer fresh data. So you always need to make sure that the data that you are collecting is fresh and accurate, and it's not stale data. Okay, so when you start collecting and when you start analyzing, make sure that your data is fresh and not stale. So that's about how you collect these performance measures. So be it whatever initiative, let me tell you, friends, so whatever initiative, whatever project, whatever product you're working on, the end goal is you want some return of investment, right? And how do you monitor, how do you track this return of investment? It's through metrics and KPIs that you're able to justify that, yes, this is the solution we put in, this is the effort, time that we have put, all this is the investments, and this is what the returns that we get. In that way, it helps you justify that the solution is actually valuable to the business. So I hope that you got some information on how do you measure these solution performance measures. If you liked this video, please do give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.